Want to sell more books? Make sure you're at the Self-Publishing Show live this summer. Meet the biggest names in self-publishing at Europe's largest conference for independent authors. Enjoy 2 days packed with special guests, an exclusive networking event, and a digital ticket for watching the professionally filmed replay, including bonus sessions not included at the live show. Head over to selfpublishingshow.com/tickets and secure your spot now. The Self-Publishing Show Live is sponsored by Amazon KDP.
On this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
Protect your time, protect your work, and know that it really is, at the end of the day, butts and seats. And there's going to be times where you're just struggling to get the words down, but you just keep trying. That's the main goal.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers, no more barriers, no one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome. It is the Self-Publishing Show with me, James Blatch.
And me, Mark Dawson.
Hey, Mark Dawson, how you doing?
I'm okay, James Blatch. How are you?
I'm good. I've been doing lots of interviews today, but in between, I've been delving into Facebook lead gen ads. And believe it or not, despite doing some of the coursework on that around it, I think you did all the coursework on that. I've never actually properly run one in anger. So today I've been going through that process. It's a little bit easier than it was, I think, last time. So now you can create the lead gen ad within the campaign. The lead gen form, I should say.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes. I mean, to give away my book, Desert Venom, which I'm still charging for on Kindle because it keeps selling copies every day.
Is it in Kindle Unlimited?
It's not
Good.
in Kindle Unlimited, so
Good.
no, I'm not that stupid. No.
Yeah, well, good. Some people, it's just easy to forget sometimes, but no, you can't use it in any other way. So that's good.
No, so I will do that. So I've set up my book funnel, love book funnel, and going through my campaign now, probably use mailing list lookalikes, I think, to start it off with. Old men interested in Cold War. And what I'm interested in is what the lead gen itself is going to look like, because you get this first page called the intro page, I think, and you can actually delete that because all it says is just like a bit of blah to your person, which I did first of all fill out as saying, tap next to get your free book. But then I thought, well, I have an option not to have this page there at all, which is good. So it goes straight to the email. I don't ask for first name, just an email, because I've learned from you. But then it doesn't show an image, doesn't allow you to put an image in. It's just grayed out and it says, we'll use an image from your advertising. But I would like to know what that looks like. I'm not sure what stage I get to see that.
You should send it to yourself as a preview. And then I think you can go through the process and see what it looks like on your phone.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'll do that. Anyway, I'll let you know. I haven't been running Facebook ads for a while. I've been really focusing on Amazon ads for my own books, which seem to be doing pretty well. So yeah, that's my news in the world of book marketing, the low-level world of book marketing, the £12,000 a year profit.
That's not bad. 3 books.
That's not bad. That's brilliant. I'm really happy with it.
Yeah.
And you make £12,000 every 5 minutes.
Not quite, but yeah. It's been a pretty goodish start to the year, a little slower than usual maybe, but I think that's kind of, coming out of the pandemic and cost of living and all that kind of stuff. Plus I haven't written a Milton book for a while, so I'm doing 2 Milton books back to back.
Is Milton your Holmes? You want to kill him at some point?
No, I don't want to kill him
because you're hamstrung by him.
He pays the mortgage. I quite like, it's quite fun. I've got into a nice position now where I can write Atticus and Milton. They're both quite different. So if I need a break, I just do the other one. That works quite nicely. But no, Milton, I haven't done any for a little while, so it is quite nice just to kind of jump back into that again. So I'm in Dublin at the moment, and then off to, well, I'm not literally in Dublin, but he's in Dublin, and then he's going to be going off to Ukraine, I think, for the next one. I'm going to do something based around Ukraine. Quite interesting.
And what's historical stage will the war be in?
It'll be on it'll be contemporary, so we'll still be on.
Still be going. Okay. Okay, so if you'd like to get into all this marketing that we're talking about, perhaps make £12,000 a year or a few days, depending if you're more successful than me, you can take our course, selfpublishingformula.com/launchpad, which is open for enrollment for another week. Also, a few days at least, the foundation course to set yourself up to market your books, where I learned everything, what I know. Seems to be working for me. I know it's worked very well for some other authors. And we are getting closer. Now, we're recording this a bit in advance. It's a little bit hard for me to know for certain we're going to have tickets left to sell for the show. We do have an absolute limit, obviously for fire regulations, etc. One thing I have added today for people who just want to go to the self-publishing party, which is in the evening on the 20th. That's the Tuesday, the 20th of June, at the same venue, the South Bank Centre. There is an option now. It's 30 quid just to come to the party alone in the evening. But we have a very limited number of those because I can only allocate those to people who've bought. If someone buys a day-only ticket, then that releases the fire limit for one person to come to the party. So I think there's 96 tickets available for that, and there probably won't be any more after they're gone. Where can you go, Mark, to sign up?
I think that's selfpublishingformula.com/SPS live, if I'm not very much mistaken.
That is correct. Okay, we have an interview for you. It is Georgina Cross. I had a lovely time talking to Georgina. She's talking about the difference between working as a writer not working as a writer, being a writer published by a big five. I think we're talking Penguin, Random House, but also one of the more agile hybrid authors, I suppose you call it that. Bookature actually is now part of Hatchet, but nonetheless started a bit like Fuse Books and works in quite a different way, what we would consider perhaps a bit more agile and modern to the old ways, but very interesting as an author, what it's like working for those two sides. So here's Georgina, and Mark and I will be back for a quick chat at the end of the interview.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Georgina Cross, welcome to the Self-Publishing Show. I think you're in Alabama, aren't you? In fact, I think you're in Huntsville.
I am.
Is that you?
Do you actually know Huntsville, Alabama?
I only know Huntsville because I'm a space geek, and that's where they built the Saturn V rocket. In fact, I think they still build NASA rockets in Huntsville, don't they?
They do. And I work at my kitchen desk, so it's not abnormal to hear booms and shakes like so loud that the kitchen windows rattle. And it's odd because I think, how do we go about our lives? The kids are in school and they just go, rocket scientists blowing up something again.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully they're planned booms, but I suppose when you're building rockets and testing them, occasionally that's unplanned. But
right.
Yeah, no, I've never visited Huntsville, but I don't know what sort of visiting options they have at the NASA plant in Huntsville. Is it something you can go and have a look around? Or?
Oh, yeah, they've got the huge museum. They have space camp for adults, too.
Oh, my God, I'm doing space camp for adults.
You should totally do. Our nephew did it. I know a couple of adult friends that have gone, and you would love it.
Oh, my God, that's a bucket list. I'm on there. The only time I ever go to Alabama is just driving along the south. You know, you drive is it the I-10 that runs along through Louisiana, Alabama.
Oh,
So
yes.
so it's through Mobile, and I've stopped there because I've got the USS Alabama and a few things there and a few aircraft there. But there you go. I need to go because Alabama, of course, you know, are used to the song and everything. Should probably explore the state a bit more.
Right.
And I'm trying to collect state capitals for pub quizzes in the UK. So Montgomery is one. I think most people don't know Montgomery as the state capital.
I am so impressed.
There you go. Well, listen, I'm British, and you sound like you're born and bred in the United States, but you're not. You are, in fact, one of us, I believe.
I am one of you. That's why I listen to your podcast and Joanna Penn's podcast. My dad's from Gloucestershire, but I was born in Hong Kong, and we lived abroad, England. We were in Malaysia. That's where my mother's from. And then we moved to New Orleans. So I'm a New Orleans girl at heart, but we moved here for a job several years ago and been here ever since. So yeah, I've got the American accent, probably a little Southern too, which is confusing.
Yeah, it's not full Southern yet, but maybe another 10, 15 years. And what's Huntsville like then as a city? What's Alabama like as a state to live in?
Gosh, compared to New Orleans, it's very conservative and quiet. I mean, compared to New Orleans, right?
Yes, which is a rowdy place.
I grew up seeing and hearing everything, which was great, which was the way I wanted my childhood to be. But yeah, I mean, living here, it's for our jobs, and then our kids were born here. But it's nice. My parents are here now after Hurricane Katrina. They moved here, and They enjoy the hills. There are a lot of hills here, which is not something we were used to living in Louisiana. A lot of swamps, as you would know, and alligators. But yeah, here it's basically you can't throw a rock without hitting an engineer. My husband is an engineer.
Right.
And I used to work in aerospace and defense contracting. So pretty much any neighbor around here, if they're not a lawyer or work at one of the hospitals, they are connected with military or defense contracting in some way.
Sounds like my kind of town.
I know. Come on over.
I need to come to Huntsville, Alabama.
And go to space camp.
We will talk about writing and books in a second, but alligators, I mean, this is such a foreign concept to somebody born and bred and lives in Britain. The idea that you can take your dog for a walk and there's a small chance that one or both of you can get, I mean, have you had any close encounters?
When I look back and I think of the places we swam, they were questionable, and not just for alligators, but water moccasins, cottonmouths. I mean, our neighborhood was
snakes,
built up.
are they?
Oh yes,
yes. Yeah. Okay.
Nasty stuff. So our neighborhood was built up on a swamp, and when it would flood, when it would rain, basically half a day of rain, the whole area would flood. Right, we couldn't handle it. And so you'd see snakes crossing the road and people out on their boats. And we couldn't go to school some days because we couldn't drive out and clear the neighborhood. It was fun. For my family who's not American originally, my mother's from Malaysian, she's Malaysian Chinese. And then my dad, it was a very different upbringing.
Yeah. I mean, Malaysia probably gets the odd poisonous thing, but not alligators is just, I don't know. I say, okay, I'll watch the golf and occasionally you see an alligator on the golf course on the PGA, and there's like 2/3 of the golf tour are like from around the world, and they're terrified and they run, and then a third like are brought up where you are, and they just wave their club at it and sort of go and poke it until it gets back in the water. I'm thinking, wow, you can just sort of tell who's used to it, who's not. Anyway, enough about dangerous amphibians. Let's talk about writing, and I think we're going to talk about traditional publishing and writing and the traditional life and being published, because we do, obviously being the self-publishing show, talk a lot about indie, but we've always said, Mark's always said, what's right for one person isn't necessarily right for the other person, and the publishing route is absolutely a valid and valuable option. It's still, let's face it, a very sought after option in publishing, and you have contracts with the big, at least two of the big, what used to be the big five. I can't remember, it's amalgamated so much now, I don't know how many are left, but so let's talk a little bit about you, when you got going and when you got your first publishing agreement.
Okay, so a long, long time ago. No, I'm kidding. I've only been publishing for 2.5 years. It feels like, I know, it feels like I've probably aged. And so as I was saying, I worked in defense contracting, but I'd always wanted to write. And I wrote as a kid. And I went to school for journalism, communications, marketing. That was the career from the get-go. But, kids, life got in the way. It's busy. I know you've got children. They take up a lot of time. And eventually, though, I thought I've got to double down and I really want to pursue this writing career. And if I'm going to do it, then I will write every single weekend. And so when I couldn't get rid of the children and get them out of the house or have somebody else take them to their basketball tournaments, I would write. And finally got an agent. And honestly, I had an interview with Joanna Penn, and she was asking similar questions like, why did you go that route? And as I told her, and I'll tell you too, I really did not know what I was doing. Working full time. And then with the kids, I would research, but I didn't research probably enough as I could. And so I took the angle of, well, an agent will help me. She knows or he knows what this world is like, and they'll guide me through this process. And so that's what I did. I really didn't have the luxury, or maybe just the wherewithal and time to look into it on doing it on my own. Although I knew that was always a possibility. I've been listening to you guys for years. I've been listening to Joanna's show for years and years. So I always wanted to keep that in my back pocket. But no, we ended up selling the books. And I signed with 2 publishers, like you were saying. One's Bookouture, so they're out of London with you guys, and in the UK with Hachette, they're underneath Hachette Publishing. And then I had been writing another manuscript, and my agent was able to sell it a month later to Penguin Random House with Bantam, which was so exciting. But at the same time, I was faced with a 2-book deal and then a 1-book deal all on top of each other. And that was a lot.
So when you were discussing that, were you talking to both publishers about all the books and they just decided we'd take this one? Because it seems like an unusual thing to do, to sign with two publishers at roughly the same time.
It is unusual. And as exciting as it is, I wouldn't recommend it to a lot of people because hence the comment of, I feel like I've aged, in the last 2.5 years. It's been a lot of duplicating timelines and editors have tried to work with me, but gosh, it's been a rush and a lot of work. But no, the reason is because I had written a manuscript. It took my agent a couple years to sell it. And while she was trying to sell it, I was writing this other manuscript. So when she did get the 2-book deal with Bookouture, they took the first book, which was called The Stepdaughter, signed me for 2-book deal. So I knew eventually I'd have to write that one. And then in the meantime, I had this other manuscript. Because as you've heard, and a lot of people have said, don't ever stop writing, always keep working. Because that's what I did every weekend, just would keep writing. We pitched it to Bookouture, this other manuscript. And because it wasn't domestic suspense, which is what they wanted to frame me in, I didn't even know what, I just wrote suspense. I just wanted to write about this house burning to the ground, a girl going missing. So as I was learning this, they were putting me into this box, so to speak, of this is how we'll market you. And because this other book, Nanny Needed, was set in New York City, Upper West Side, completely different, much grittier, much crazier, more fun, they turned it down. And it, that was fine. We sold it to Bantam a month later. That's how I ended up with the two publishers.
Yeah. And we should say Bookouture is sort of like an indie publisher. I mean, it started very much like Fuse Books, which Mark and I are running, and then had the good fortune to sell to Hachette. And I think they've kept it. In fact, I think that's a big traditional publisher MO, isn't it, over the years? Because you look at Little Brown and all these imprints, which I guess at one point were their own publishers and are now amalgamated under these names. Like I think Little Brown is a Hachette one. So Bookouture will have, I suspect, for you a slightly different feel from the Penguin Random House operation.
Yeah. There's, and like you said, you hit it on the head. They are smaller, even though they're underneath a big publisher. They do have that boutique feel to them. They've managed to stay small and nimble. It doesn't take very long to get an answer to a question of mine. And I love that. I feel as if I know a lot of the senior management just through Zoom calls or the Facebook group. And whereas with Bantam, they're with Penguin. And so that's massive. And they are bigger. They're much more established in terms of being in New York City and all the other imprints they have. I've been to their offices. It's huge. And while I've enjoyed it, no, there's no way I could meet most of the people within Bantam, let alone the other imprints. I've only met 3 of the marketing people, whereas with Bookouture, it's the entire team. I could, email them directly. So it is different. And that's been interesting, being with the 2 different publishers. I have not yet self-published. So that would be, the third prong to this, to be able to compare all 3. But yeah, it's been interesting being with a large publisher and then a somewhat smaller one. Yeah.
And I know publishing deals are confidential. I'm not going to ask you for the details unless you wanted to volunteer them. But does the agreement and the remuneration feel different between the 2?
The frequency of pay is absolutely the first thing I noticed. Going from a career 20 plus years of being paid twice a month, and it's guaranteed, so to speak, as long as they keep you. I all of a sudden went to being paid with Bookouture every 4 months. It's quarterly, but by the time they reconcile, especially with getting all the Audible sales in, it takes an extra month to reconcile everything. So I get paid every 4 months, which is technically 1 calendar year. It's 3 times a year. Wow. So there is, being able to budget, there is basically, I'm watching my bank account. It has to stretch till the next payment. Now that's better, because with Bantam, the way a lot of these bigger publishers have gone, it's you get the advance, but it's paid with my deal. It's paid 4 times over 2 years. And that's tough for some folks.
Wow.
So
even less.
Yes.
Even less often.
Yes. Even less often.
You should have signed the Fuse. We pay every month.
Right. And so, Amazon, Thomas & Mercer, there are other publishers that pay every month. And so it's who you end up going with and how it is. I did not know this until I signed the contract with Bantam, and then I signed again with them, and then signed another 2-book deal with Bookouture. And that's why I've had so many books come out so quickly. But yeah, that's to answer your question. That's the first thing I noticed was, wow, what a change in terms of how to budget, how to have a career like this. And you've talked about this with other authors you've interviewed, especially Americans, where, yeah, we need health insurance. I mean, it blows my mind because I go back home to the UK. And my aunt's south of London. She was in Wimbledon for quite some time. And when I go stay and visit with friends, I have universal health care, just like you guys. And I here now, so luckily my husband is still with the company where I used to work. So yeah, the whole family's on his health insurance coattails. So that's what allows me to be a freelance writer, so to speak, to be a business entrepreneur or self-entrepreneur. But other, I don't know how they do it. It's a tough deal.
Yeah, that is tough. The other thing that strikes me about this arrangement you've got is that having one publisher setting you deadlines and saying, we need this manuscript, we're going to give you the edits on this date, I want them back this date. Do these two publishers, are they aware of each other and deadlines? Because you're sitting in the middle of this, you could easily end up overwhelmed.
Oh, yeah. That's why, again, thankfully I have an agent. Now with Bookouture, you don't need to have an agent. You can submit to them online. I can't remember if you use, how is that?
Yeah, well, you can, absolutely. We only take direct submissions, actually. See,
that's fantastic. And so there are a lot of authors that they don't have an agent and they're doing really, really, really well with Bookouture. With me having my agent, yeah, she's had to earn her money because there have been several times where she's had to come into the middle and try to negotiate. We had to re-amend the contract with Bantam because we had stretched. They felt like the books were coming out a little too close to one another, so it was going to affect marketing. And Bookouture understood too, because anything they were effort, time, money, their staff that were putting out info on my books wasn't encroaching on the Bantam books, and the analytics would get confused. And so we decided to re-amend, and there's like a 4-month pause before and after a Bantam book, before a Bookouture book can be. So that's just in itself one parameter, and that my agent and I have to really keep track of. And yes, the editors absolutely know. And I try not to speak to them too much about it, but they're aware. And I'll be honest with them, like I've got this deadline, and then I'll get to you. But yeah, it's having two different editors, which, like I was telling Joanna on her show, it's with the creative pen, it's two different bosses, it's two different timelines, two different expectations. They're two different people. So it's different ways of editing. I've learned from both of them massively, which has been cool too. Really, really interesting and cool to see that too.
And have you enjoyed kind of deadline environments? I mean, it sounds a bit tough on occasions, but as a writer, is it something that works for you?
That's such
a long enough pause for me to know that's not necessarily the case. But
I like to plan. I'm a planner, so yeah, deadlines are good. But the last year and a half, I did not want to turn down the renegotiating of contracts. I did not want to turn down those offers after wanting to be a writer for so long and have a book published for so long. How could I possibly say no? And so, yeah, I mean, of course, the contracts both were expiring at the same time. So when they renewed it, that just meant the timelines piled on top of me again. And so I really felt it this last year and a half. It took me longer to write, took me longer to get the books out. I think I was just tapped. I was exhausted and burned myself out. And so, yeah. And then, we have 4 boys together, my husband and I, combined family of 4. So it's just a lot that's going on in this household. And I really want to take my time with the next book. I felt like some of the ones I did the last few years were rushed. I'd really like to start paying attention to more quality writing, more character-driven writing. I love plot. But yeah, I really want to get into that type of writing and dig a little deeper into my own, because I write psychological suspense, dig a little deeper into my own psyche, which I think would be incredibly fun, maybe surprising and shocking to others, which I think would be also great. But yeah, deadlines are it's a double-edged sword, man. I mean, it makes you turn in your work, because I could see without it where I'd say I could put it off for another month, but I think my work ethic says no, and then I have to say, well, contractually, if this is due, I got to turn it in.
Yeah. That goes back a long way in the creative arts, the whole deadline thing. And I remember I had a tour around the Abbey Studios in London where the Beatles recorded and Pink Floyd and my favourite bands. And the exec I met there was the boss of my friend, the reason I was there. I remember Pink Floyd in particular were very disparaging about the suits. You know, the people who were bored them to tears, asking them to do this. They had to do this, they had to do that. They hated it, felt like they were in prison. And he said, yeah, but if we hadn't done that, they literally wouldn't have recorded a couple of the greatest albums that came out of the 1970s because they're lazy and disorganized. Right. And I suddenly, you know, you don't really think about it like that because you're kind of on the side of the musicians, aren't you? But there's a tension there, isn't there, between somebody organized, orchestrated, being boring with a spreadsheet and this amazing creativity that comes as a result of being put under pressure to produce it. Having said, not for everyone, I guess, but you know.
No, I mean, some of the most creative minds are oftentimes kind of spiraling around in the ether, right? And that's what we love about them. But you know, you talk to them and they're disorganized, they flutter about, there's a lot of anxiety. I think we all suffer from that. The deadlines definitely have created some anxiety for me, but yeah, you do. I mean, some creatives, it's like, you've got to be able to, there's got to be some guide rails to get them to turn in their work, and they'll push against it. And I definitely, you know, the first few years I was like, oh, absolutely. I was used to project timelines and Gantt charts for my days in aerospace defense contracting. I know what deadlines are. You got to hit those milestones. But with this, I mean, especially working from home, which so many of us were doing with COVID, but with me writing full time and working from home, it could have easily been, I'll just put this off. You know, I feel stressed or I feel tired or this has happened with this child. But no, contractual deadlines are good in that way. You know, I think self-publishing authors, that's a lot of discipline. I admire that quite a bit.
Do you think you could do that if you decided to not renew contracts, say in a couple of years' time, and self-publish? Is it something you can see yourself doing?
That I could see myself self-publishing or actually turning stuff in on time?
Yeah, well, both, I suppose. I mean, it does require you to write when you self-publish as well, which I have to say I'm very bad at as well. But
right, no, I'm going to listen back to this interview and go, gosh, I sound like I don't turn stuff in, but no, I'm pretty. I have to admit, I am pretty anal retentive about deadlines. That's probably why I do stress myself out. In terms of if I want to self-publish and if I could one day, I do think that that's going to be a path I take. I believe I'll go a hybrid model. That's why I listen to you guys. I listen to Joanna. I would like to go to some more of these conferences. It's something that I want to stay at top of. I find it interesting, but I'll admit there's an intimidation factor because right now I quote unquote get to write. And there is this group that does, for the most part, a lot of other stuff for me. And yes, could that be more money that I get to keep in my pocket because now there's this overhead cost, and then this cost goes out to my agent too, and she takes her percentage, which she absolutely deserves. But you know, I'd like to one day, because I am one of those spreadsheet gals, I'd like to sit down and really, and I've seen some articles where people have tried to put, you know, this is the cost when they're self-publishing for an editor and then a high quality design, you know, cover designer, and compare that to, say, labor. Like your personal labor, what that costs in terms of your time. And is that time that could be taken away and is being taken away from writing, like really, really deep dive writing. So I've got to weigh that because yes, while I've got somebody doing a lot of this for me, could I at the end of the day keep more money for myself? I don't know. I really have to look at, you know, is my time something I want to contribute to that? And everything you guys do is self-publishing. It's a lot of work. I mean, you guys do a lot of work, and then there's all the extra marketing. I'm really impressed, seriously impressed. And I want to stay abreast of all of it eventually, because eventually I think I will go that way.
Yeah, I bet you'll be good at it too. Feel that. Okay, let's talk about the writing then. So, I mean, relatively recent than your first contract, but you said you were writing at weekends. You decided you just wanted to start writing. So was it always thrillers that you began with or played with?
Yeah, I mean, since I was a little kid, I was writing, and then my 20s and 30s, I wrote some short stories, but mostly for myself. And then this is where the story gets sad, but my best friend passed away. So she was 34, died of cancer. I was 32, and we lost her in 11 months. And so it was fast and tough. And I wrote sat down and wrote a short story about what it was like, because she asked me to help plan her funeral. So we went through all the steps of what she wanted before she passed. And I just had to get that out of my system. I probably should have gone to a therapist at the same time, but I wrote the short story, and there were friends of mine that just could not read it. And then there were some friends that wrote it, and I found it so cathartic on so many levels. And the next thing I knew, I was writing a little bit more again. And one of the short stories, somebody read it and said, this really could be a full-length book. And that felt very daunting to me. A full-length book is highly different, as you know, than a shorter story or novella. It's a lot more effort and work and a lot more editing. But that's what got me going. I think it built the confidence in me, on top of the fact that, I did want to eventually have a book published. And so that's where it went.
Yeah. I've made this observation before on the show, the interviews I do, that I think somebody once said that the reason people read books is so they can help them make sense of the world. But one of the great revelations for me, sitting in this seat, is that writers write books to help them make sense of the world. And I don't think, I think the value, the cathartic value, the therapy value, if you want, of writing is, you can't underestimate it. I've certainly found that with my, trying to examine my dad and my background. It's been an important process for me. So I understand that, and I hope it's helped. And I thought, presumably your friend, was she there to see the finished short story? Was this afterwards? It was helped you process afterwards.
Yeah. We were supposed to go on her last trip, and she died the night of the trip. And so that was another blow. And so, it's several friends have said to me, and my husband too, he's like, how do you write? How have you gone on and written suspense and about death and about murder? And, you've personally witnessed this with her, and no, touch wood, thank God she was not murdered, but it was the dying of her soul. And it was, the anticipatory loss from us too. And, I don't know, I approached death very differently. I think I hate saying this, but I feel like I've been hardened to it. A lot of us, as we get older, we get hardened to so many things. And I feel like I'm able to have a separation a little bit, and I have to. And suspense is where my mind goes. Even before she got sick and after she died, I've always loved suspense and horror movies, and we watch horror movies all year long. Like, it's not just Halloween. Halloween, we just watch, maybe 5 a week as opposed to 1 a week. But it, to me, it feels like something that is intriguing, interesting. I get it out of my system. I really do. And that's helped. Yeah.
We do. We have a fascination with death, I think. We don't talk about it very much, but we all do. It's an incredible earthy fascination with what happens, and that's, lots has been written on this subject, but part of that I think is it's not happening to us, which is probably why we kind of do get drawn to horror movies, and helps us reassure ourselves. Perhaps the more we know about it, the more protective we're going to be of us. All sorts of psychology in there, isn't there? But horror movies, we love our horror movies. I love them more than anyone else in the house, which is problematic because I end up watching them by myself alone at 11 o'clock at night. Yeah, and I get scared, which is the point.
Right.
Okay, well, so suspense. Give us an idea, Georgina, of what sort of books. So you mentioned you like horror movies, but looking at the books, I think these are real world, or do you have some supernatural elements in there?
So with Book Couture, I wrote the first book. Like I said, I wanted I saw a house fire, a girl going missing. I wrote what I was interested in. And that's when, Book Couture started talking about domestic suspense and psychological suspense and things that, like you said, real world, what you could imagine happening in your neighborhood. You hope that it doesn't, that it would never happen to your neighbor or, God forbid, to yourself. But my God, if it did, what would you do in that situation? How would you react? How are you responding to his or her decision? So those books go in more of that direction. And that was part of the amended contract, was how to separate my stuff between the two publishers so they wouldn't overlap too much, because technically I'm writing under the same genre. So with Bantam, when I wrote Nanny Needed, I wasn't thinking, I've got to write something completely different. I just had this idea. I wrote what I love, what I wanted to write. It just turned out to be a lot creepier, which I love. My brain goes that way. And my future books with Bantam are a lot creepier. And yeah, there are ghostly elements in it. I didn't plan for it to be that way. I started reading a lot of Simone St. James. She tends to have, ghosts or illusions of hauntings. And that's that Chinese side of me. We're very superstitious culture. And so ghost stories were always something that we would convince each other, like, they're around us. They're here. We're, she's seeing something again. And so that was always intriguing to me. And so that has been part of those books without really intending it to be that way. It just has. And so my locations for the Bantam books tend to be bigger settings, not necessarily realistic. Nanny Needed, I've had some reviewers say, you've really got to like suspend your belief in this. It's entertainment. It's fun. It's outrageous. And that's what I love. The ending is just a little bit mind-blowing. And I strive for that. So, does it pigeonhole me? I guess yes and no. But at the same time, if I'm going to continue to, say, publish with these two publishers, it's giving me some guidelines, because I know this is what the editor is expecting. And this is kind of where I need to go. And that's helped because I had such strict timelines to turn in these books. But yeah, the next book for next year, I do want to slow it down in terms of how long I write on it and write a little bit more of what I want. And then we'll see. We'll see which publisher wants it.
It seems to be like a difficult, not difficult, but there's a line, isn't there, in when you talk about supernatural stuff, because people who read, sinister, even suspense books, that's quite different from there being overtly supernatural elements. That sort of crosses into a different genre. Do you have? I mean, I'm trying to think of. I think it was the film What Lies Beneath. I can't remember the book, but the end of it, I thought was really clever in that you could look at what happened at the end two ways. You could either see it purely a physical thing that happened as a body was released from a car, or you could see it as a ghost. And I thought it was clever. And maybe the reason they did that was because they wanted the creepy horrorness of the whole thing, but without saying, oh, it was supernatural, it was a ghost, which is a little bit like it was magic. Is that a line you find yourself toying with?
Mine tends to be that someone has died, and therefore, as the family's moved on, there is this missing, this grieving. I mean, who knows? Maybe this is drawn from what happened with my friend, but there's this missing and this grieving and this ghostly element of, do I still see her? Do I still hear her? Do I still hear her laugh? Similar to, like, I'm sure when you remember your father, did he pass away?
No, he's 92.
Oh, okay. Oh, good.
So,
good. Okay.
Yeah. But my mother's passed away. But yeah, so there is those. So I guess what I'm guessing at is, how overt is it? Could the reader think it's in their mind? Or does it become?
It's definitely in the character's mind, because the situation is so wrought with suspense and angst, and it's a high pressure. Like the next book I have occurs in just one night. Literally, the book is all night long, and it's a pressure cooker inside that house. There's a storm coming from the Pacific. And so when you're in that situation, and you're already grieving and you're already scared to death and things are happening, is there guilt of what happened in the past? Memories coming to play. Do I see something, smell something, remember her? I'm feeling something, and maybe, like, again, it is that guilt factor. And so I bring in a lot of elements of dresses and outlines of a skirt, possibly, but it's a curtain from a window. And is she remembering something that happened to this young woman? Right. That's where I go.
Well, let's not give away too much. These sound brilliant, by the way, these books. I can see you exactly. But it's funny how when somebody finds their niche and you sort of talking to you, I'm already thinking lots of things in your life have led to this point. There's sort of some of the heritage background, some of the experiences you've had, and you seem to be in an ideal position to tell these stories. You said you're a planner in the sense of deadlines and organization. Are you a planner in terms of story? Are you a plotter in that sense?
I plot now. I used to not plot, and I learned horrifically how bad that would be and problematic in terms of rewriting the damn manuscript over and over. I can't just wing it. And so what I do is I now plot. And when I say plot, it is a loose plot, because I don't I get, for fantasy writers, they have to write hundreds of pages for a plot and build out worlds and characters. I don't go that extreme. I don't think that I need to, but I definitely need some sort of roadmap to avoid the massive overhaul of edits that could come my way. So it's literally chapter three to four bullet points. I go through it several times, maybe bounce some ideas off the editor, make sure it's possibly copacetic, work out some kinks. And then I literally put it aside, minimize it on my screen, or I've printed it out, stuck it to the side. And once I start writing, the middle tends to just go all over the wonderful place as my brain. And I think that's the lovely part of the creative process is, yeah, I have a guideline, but now that I'm in it, my character all of a sudden surprises me, or this happens, or this person shows up, or this person gets killed off. I think that's the beauty of writing, of what we do. And the ending, for the most part, my endings tend to stay how I envisioned it. The last couple of books, I have switched it up. I was like, wait a minute, this person should have, right? Love that moment. We love those moments when those thoughts come. And that's in that flow stage, which is so sought after. But trust me, there are days where I'm banging my head against the keyboard. It's like chewing glass, trying to write out words. I can get 500 a day, if I'm lucky. If I'm in the flow, it's like 1,200, 2,000. And then I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I've got to do some marketing now. But I write 7 days a week. And so that has been exhausting. It's been part of the burnout for the past year and a half. And so I want to slow down, at least maybe take a Sunday off.
Yeah, that would be nice. Well, thank you for saying that you struggle and that sometimes it's really hard, because successful writers, hearing people say that, it's important. And I'm not sure for the rest of us realize that it's basically the same for everybody. I mean, some people, I think, make it sound probably easier than it really is for them, but they might think that they're showing a vulnerability by saying they have days when it's hard. But anyway, thank you.
No, I think it's something. I've been to a lot of conferences and panel discussions where there's this panel I want to introduce of the idea that creatives and people, I think really, if anything, there's a point where we have to be selfish, and selfish in a different spin. Not necessarily selfish because you're an egomaniac and a narcissist, but selfish in terms of protecting your time. And so when I worked Monday through Friday, I absolutely time blocked. Every weekend was sacrosanct. I had to be selfish. And my children I love, but I was like, go make your own food, leave me alone. I can't hang out with friends. I've really had to say no to a lot of things. And I think it's just with whatever you want to do, whether you want to learn to be an amazing chef, you want to shoot hoops like Steph Curry, you're going to shoot 1,000 times a day or whatever that deal was. And he wasn't spending time with friends. You have to make certain sacrifices to get to where you are. And that's how I've seen it. And so I'd like to bring that word selfish into the vernacular, but in a more positive way. Protect your time, protect your work, and know that it really is, at the end of the day, butts and seats. And there's going to be times where you're just struggling to get the words down, but you just keep trying. That's the main goal.
Yeah, a positive spin on selfishness. I'm assuming Steph Curry is a basketball player. Did you say?
Yes.
Did you say Steph Curry? Okay.
Yes.
I'm not. I've heard of like 4 basketball players. Those, going back to Magic Johnson, that's about it, and the Harlem Globetrotters. But I think Mark knows his basketball, and I know most of our audience will be shouting at me. But I just wanted to, just for the other third of the audience.
Right. Yes. Basketball player. I should clarify.
Who does he play for? Is he?
Gosh, who does he play for now? He's bounced around. I don't know.
Everyone's now shouting. They're shouting at both of us with the answer.
My kids probably, my kids play basketball for their school, so they're going to die when they get this later.
Yeah, I'll look it up in the sneaky when you're doing your next answer. So you do your plotting. That sounds actually really similar to me, writing out, like I write maybe 3,000 to 5,000 word synopsis of the book, and then I don't look at it again while I write the book. But that's an important part of the process for me. And then you juggle your commitments, your writing commitments leading up to deadlines. Do you write more than one book at once, or do you sort of compartmentalize and
I have to. So back to that time blocking, I will block out, say, 3 months that I work on this book in terms of drafting it. And then I will block out, okay, these 2 weeks I have to now edit the other book. So because of the contracts overlapping, I'm not necessarily writing 2 books at the same time, but I will be writing one, editing the other, turning in a book, thinking I can get a break. Nope. This other one came in and it's time for, copious copy edits, and I want to tear my hair out. And so, I have to time block and have to plan it that way, or else my brain will just go crazy. And so, yeah, I just don't see friends. I don't go places. I'd like to eventually, by nighttime, I'm so tired.
So you don't see friends and your children have to feed themselves. But apart from that,
everything's great.
It's working out really well, this new career.
Yeah, my husband's like, I'll see you later.
Yeah, see you in 2026. Yeah. By the way, Golden State Warriors.
Yes, there you go.
Marketing. So I think the days of Ernest Hemingway just going fishing in between writing books are probably over for traditionally published authors. You must have to get in some way involved in marketing. What does that look like for you?
For me, it's Instagram and Facebook. I'm off Twitter. Gosh, after everything that's been going on the last few months. I think you're off Twitter. Is that what I heard?
I don't. I find Twitter a very toxic place. I do not use it for marketing at all. I use it for following military aviation stuff I'm interested in, try to keep out of everything else.
There you go. Smart man. Yeah. And I threw some things up on TikTok because I went to a conference where somebody recommended at least have a TikTok account name. They can tag you and that would be great. So I threw some videos up there, got some follows. I'm like, whatever. And I'm not this performative person. I want to write, but yeah, I get it. And, at any point TikTok's going to get banned. So I'm like, here we go. We'll just work on some other social media platform. But for me, Facebook has been huge because of the local connection. A lot of my stories are based around here in Alabama. So people seem to love that. You think they would be like, no, don't put a murder in my neighborhood. And they end up loving it and telling all their friends about it. So that's been fun. But
are they worried about their real estate prices?
Yeah, but we moved house. We moved house, so the new neighbors were like, great. She's gonna, right. And so, but no, I've really taken the backseat approach to marketing. I've got to work on it some more. I really depended on Bantam, and they did a great job pushing out Nanny Needed. And that was huge. They did things that I wouldn't have been able to do or known who to call or contact and afford to pay for. And so, but in the last few months, because of the deadlines, I've not gotten into Facebook advertising and Amazon advertising, which I know you guys talk about quite a bit. I actually did Mark Dawson's course like 6 years ago, perhaps. The whole thing, like 4 hours worth. Have not spent a dime yet on Facebook, but I will. I want to eventually. I need to get into it because it is important. But for now, it's a lot of interviews, a lot of local events, which has been fantastic because when you think that people are mostly staying at home and watching Netflix, and which is what I am that person. I sit and watch a lot of Netflix. There are a ton of people still reading, and that has been refreshing to me. And then I'm good at talking with people. I could probably talk to you for the next 6 hours. We could talk about space camp and alligators some more, but these local events is where I really connect with readers. It just feels more personal, and I get more bang out of it than just this random post and these people I've never met. I love all of them, but I really like to see people face to face.
How old fashioned of you? You actually like meeting real people rather than
probably because
making friends on the internet.
Probably because I've been stuck at home with COVID and then working 7 days a week, that if I do have to leave the house, I'm like, oh my gosh, there are humans out here.
Your background of being British, born in Hong Kong, did you say you're born in Hong Kong? Yes. And Chinese family?
Malaysian, Chinese,
Malaysian, Chinese. Does any of that find its way into your books with characters?
The next book it's going to.
Ooh.
Yeah, I haven't said that out loud yet. I haven't even talked to my editors yet, but I have a couple of story ideas that I pitched and they were like, it sounds interesting. And then this one just percolated. And I think it's time. There have been a couple of people who have said to me, you don't put Asian characters in your books. And I was like, I don't. Never thought of it. Really, truly, I'm half Caucasian. I just never thought about it. But there are so many stories I could tap into from just my Malaysian side that would be interesting. My God, the book would write itself. And so I'm going to try it. And I don't know. I don't know if a publisher will want it, but it's something that I feel that I need to do. And we're going to Malaysia this summer. That's probably what has prompted this. COVID shut us down, so we couldn't go. But we're taking the boys, my husband, my parents. It's like the Caucasian invasion. We're all going to head over to Malaysia and see the family. But while I'm there, I'll be taking notes, all the ghost stories that my Chinese family have
and I'm thinking Beef has become a big hit on Netflix. I don't know if you've watched it yet, the series. But because that seems to be sort of like it's broken through to like the mainstream. And I suspect it's got lots of in jokes for American Asian culture in there, which.
Yes, I am so pleased, especially because it's a Chinese actress. She's married. Her husband in the show is Japanese, and then the guy she's feuding with is Korean. And I love that because most people can't tell us apart, and they don't know some of the differences. And the show is very clever in its writing and its subtle stereotypes that people will make a quip, and most people would ignore it. And then there's this moment of, wait a minute, and they don't push it. They're not, it's not in your face. It's very subtle. And I watched that show in less than 2 days. Yeah,
it was very funny. We enjoyed it very much, and dark as well. But I just wondered if there's now going to be more opportunities for that type of comedy, and it's probably been, I think, underrepresented in mainstream American Asian culture.
Well, and then and it's on the coattails of Everything Everywhere All at Once. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't, but I've heard about that. Yeah, I mean, obviously I've heard about it. Huge Oscar-winning film, but I will at some point see it. I've heard really, really mixed reviews from my friends about that. Some have come out of the cinema saying waste of time. Others have come out saying best film I've seen this year. So
it's hilarious and it's weird. That's all I gotta say. And I love hilarious and I love weird.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Look, time has flown by. We have. It's such a great conversation, but we do try and sort of tap off our interviews about 45 minutes maximum. We've hit that wall, which is incredible. So you're going to have to come back at some point, Georgina.
You mean I can't go over 2 hours and just be like, sorry guys?
There are podcasts out there who do that, but we try and have our thing. And honestly, we could go on, couldn't we? We've barely got into rocket building, which I was hoping to have a whole sequence on, but we will we'll talk again at some point because I've really enjoyed it. It's been a fantastic conversation, Georgina. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us. I will 100%. Huntsville is on my radar, so I'll let you know when I'm in town. I'm going to go and do all the NASA stuff.
Go to space camp. I'll take photos of you in your spacesuit. Oh my gosh, it'll be so fun.
Would be hilarious going to space camp. What if I could find anybody to go with me? I'll ask my friends. Mark Dawson won't do it, I can tell you now. All these things I suggest to him, like we're going to fly in a jet in Florida. He goes, nope, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I don't know the man, but I've heard enough of your interviews and conversations. I don't see him doing it, although I think it would be hilarious to bring a video camera and show the two of you side by side during these experiences.
In our blue, I wonder what color spacesuits I get. Blue is kind of the shuttle. That's the shuttle. That's the modern era. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Not orange, the kind of Apollo era. Anyway.
No, you're not going to prison either in orange. You'll be in blue.
Yes, orange jumpsuits. Maybe that's why they changed that. Yeah. Okay. Look, thank you so much indeed, Georgina. Again, it's been brilliant talking to you.
Thank you.
Maybe see you at a conference. You're going to go to any conferences this year?
Thriller Fest. So I'm hoping Joanna Penn goes. She mentioned maybe going. I know she's been in the past, but yeah, Thriller Fest. And then I don't know when I'll get to fly over see you guys in London, but maybe soon. I've got family, so I'll go crash with them.
And you've got your passport?
Yes.
Okay, so we're June. Obviously, there's an Ink and 20 books in the autumn as well. And there's a tiny chance I might get to Thriller Festival. I'm half mulling. There's a trip I'd like to do in June, but probably not. But anyway, I'll let you know.
Okay.
All right. Have a great rest of the day, Georgina. It's night time here, but you can go and enjoy the rest of your Alabama sunshiny day.
I know you can go watch Everything Everywhere All at Once tonight.
I can, but I've got another call in 9 minutes, so
okay.
That's my life, but I will get to the cinema and watch it at some point.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Georgina.
See ya.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
There you go, Georgina Cross. So it was fun talking to Georgina. I mean, she's a bit like me. Getting around to writing has been difficult for her on the odd occasion, but having authors, I just don't fancy that deadline world. Don't fancy it. It's not for me. Never want to do it. I've done some interviews today. I was talking earlier to one of my interviewees who's never sent out a query. This is Ryan Cahill, I think, who writes in New Zealand, epic fantasy. Never sent out a query letter. Never. He discovered self-publishing at the same time he got interested in writing. Loved the idea of doing it. Has never occurred to him to try and get a publisher. And the same with me. I can't imagine myself ever writing a letter to a publisher saying, please publish me. Not my main kind of, stock. I know we talk about side deals with print editions. Absolutely. I'd be up for that. Take those off my hand. Audiobooks, take them off my hands if you want, maybe. Although even those I'm doing myself.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not for everyone. Obviously, some people are always going to be constitutionally best suited towards a traditional deal where everything is done for them after they've written the book. But more and more people these days are less interested in that, just because it's easier and easier for us to do those things ourselves and get paid quite a lot more for doing it. So, yeah, I mean, it's not something. I think I've said it before. I mean, everything's got a price. If someone comes to me and says, "We'll give you a gazillion pounds for your back catalogue," I'll probably say, "Yes, please. Here's where you sign." But that's not going to happen, and I'm quite happy to keep going along with the way I've been doing it for the last 10 years, which is fun, and direct contact with the readers and more money. All of those things. It's all great, obviously. Preaching. If you got this far in the podcast, I'm preaching to the choir, but it
has been a couple of threads on Twitter recently by traditionally published authors complaining about their lives. Two of them actually, quite similar. Both of them saying, "I just want to let enthusiastic young writers know what the reality of writing is like. First of all, I've only earned about £7,500 a year from my £100,000 contract or £50,000 contract I signed 6 years ago. We've only got 3 books out. You're constantly having edits sent back to you, and virtually everything they put in their complainy thread is solved by going indie." And of course, they got 400 replies saying you should try, and then at some point they say, "Indie's not for me." And I'm thinking, well, stop complaining then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can. Well, this is what you're going to get if you don't. If you keep doing what you've always done, you just keep getting the same. But you could. There's plenty of other options. You don't have to be a full indie these days. There are other kind of.
Yep.
You can put your half a foot in rather than jumping all the way in. So it's up to them. Isn't
like
it?
The Okie Kokie.
Yeah, exactly. For our American listeners, that one.
Surely that's an international song.
No, I'm pretty sure it's not.
Isn't it?
I think it might be. It's very
If you're
British.
American, have you heard of the Okie Kokie? I can't do the gag about the man who wrote the Okie Kokies died. They had terrible trouble at the funeral, at the coffin.
Oh dear.
Yes, okay. We have to Google it. The people on the running machines will have to Google it later. Right, that's it, Mark. We are going to say goodbye. We've got lots of stuff going on at the moment, so you and I are busy with that. We can't wait for our conference coming up soon. Don't forget, still a chance, hopefully, to get a ticket for that. selfpublishingformula.com/SPS Live. We will see you next Friday. Thank you to Georgina. It is American?
Hokey pokey in America. Hokey cokey
Hokey pokey.
In the UK.
Hokey pokey. That sounds weirder.
It sounds a bit weird.
I mean, the whole thing's a bit weird.
It is, yeah.
So they do sort of know it.
Okay.
All right. All that remains for me to say is there's a goodbye from him.
And a goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishingshow. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with The Self-Publishing Show.